We missed you last week. Where'd you go?
I was in Manhattan with my parents.
By Manhattan, you mean New York City?
Sure. New York City has 5 boroughs. Manhattan is just one of the boroughs, so you could say I was in Manhattan in New York City.
Right. Well, how was it?
It was great. There's a lot of things in New York named after some guy named Hudson. Hudson River, Henry Hudson Bridge, Hudson Yards.
Do you know who he was?
Probably some ex-mayor or politician or something.
Well, actually, he was a British navigator who was hired by the Dutch East India Company to find a shortcut to Asia. His ship was called the Half Moon. He sailed it across the Atlantic Ocean and ended up in the river which now bears his name.
Did he find his way to Asia?
Nope. He traveled up the river to what is now Albany, before he realized it would not get him to Asia. But along the way, he met many Native Americans.
How do you know that?
Because of Robert Jewett, Hudson's shipmate. Jewett kept a journal about their trip.
Did the Native Americans also keep a journal?
No, they didn't. That's why it's difficult to know what their side of the story really was.
So what did Jewett write about?
Well, he described seeing lots of Native people who looked and spoke very differently from Hudson's crew. Some Native people in canoes came on board with things like food and furs that Hudson and his crew traded for, with stuff they brought from Europe. Hudson's crew was particularly excited about the beaver furs, because there was a fashion craze in Europe at that time. Everyone wanted a beaver felt hat.
A beaver felt hat? Seriously?
Yes, they were so popular in Europe that they nearly wiped out the entire beaver population. When Hudson returned with beaver furs, Dutch traders decided to return to the area to see how many beaver furs they could bring back to Europe.
Seriously? They came to New York for beaver furs?
Yes. At first, they just traded with the native people for furs. But after a while, wealthy Dutch merchants created the Dutch West India Company and began making plans to stay in New York so they could have control of the fur trade. They built trading houses and made this area their home. They even built a fort on the tip of Manhattan to defend the area from European competitors.
So the Dutch got furs. What did the native people get in return?
The native people who lived in the area got metal kettles, beads, cloth, and other things. Many kettles were broken up and the metal was made into other tools and even ornaments. European goods were also traded for wampum, a shell bead that was traded among native people in the area before European arrival.
What did they do with wampum?
Wampum is still made and used today. But in the 17th century, it was used as jewelry, also for ceremonies, and it was even used to record important events. In fact, while there was a beaver hat craze in Europe, there was a wampum craze in what is now New York. The Dutch learned how much native people wanted wampum. They started making it themselves to trade to the native people. The Dutch used wampum as money, but native people never considered it that way.
So where are the Dutch today? And why don't I see Native Americans when I go to New York?
Well, after a while, the relationship wasn't so great between the native people, the Dutch, and the other Europeans who came later. The Dutch saw trade and exchange a lot differently than the native people who lived here. And there actually are native people who live and work in and around New York today. You might not notice though, because they don't look the way they do in our school books. Many Dutch are also still here. You could see many Dutch names all around the city, like Harlem, Bowery, and the Bronx.
Wow, that's nuts. So people like the Dutch and other Europeans started coming to New York for beaver furs and then never left?
Yeah, kinda.
That's why Hudson's name is everywhere.
Yep. And if you look throughout the city, you'll see images of beavers everywhere, including on the New York City flag.
This is the part of the story you never learn in school. I can't believe that a fashion craze started what is now known as New York.